Okay, good morning, everybody, all the Research C community. Welcome to our science fiction corner. This is a writing workshop about how to write fantastic stories in English. What kind of resources do we need in order to write a good production in English in terms of the fiction and extraordinary tales or accounts, probably. So today I want to introduce you something, okay? Here we have Mr. Poe, Mr. Joseph Tolkien, Mr. Stephen King, right? Robert Louis Stevenson, Jules Byrne, Howard Phillips Lovecraft, Isaac Asimov, J.K. Rowling, C.S. Lewis, Agatha Christie. Some of the creators of the genre we are going to learn and know about. Probably you have worked this kind of genres and styles in literature in your Spanish classes and even in your English classes. So you have some knowledge, familiar knowledge about it, right? So today, what we are going to do is identify some elements of the literature that can help us in order to write a fantastic story. Okay, so I want to show this presentation. The idea is that you listen first. The first part is about literature, then we're going to write to work writing part, and if you have some questions you can ask them in the section we have and I will answer quickly. Okay, so during these 60 minutes we're going to explore the literature part. Okay, so before starting to work about science fiction or horror or detective fiction, we need to understand where they come from, and we need to say that these kind of genres belong to a bigger one called amazing stories, extraordinary tales. And what are they? Okay, an extraordinary story, it's experience, a written experience where you express your attraction for fantastic accounts. Accounts are stories or tales or tales, right? So you express in the amazing stories attraction for fantastic accounts. You express your curiosity about something, yes, something related with fantastic things, okay? And when we explore those elements, we go to a variety of topics or situations. And these are the fantastic or the amazing stories. Examples of this kind of amazing stories are shipwrecks from fantastic voyages, space treks, heroes. The story could be about a mysterious island or mysterious islands. It could be about robots. It could be about creepy stories or horror stories. These amazing stories could be about futuristic and hostile cities. And why not? It could be the Twilight Zone, which in terms of our Spanish is the unknown dimension, right? So when you see or when you learn about extraordinary tales, probably these are some of the scenarios you can find, yes. So now we're going to explore, because the extraordinary accounts or tales have some branches or specific genres that come from the 19th century. And we're going to divide it in fourth, okay? So we have the adventure style, the adventure Yes, the adventure genre, the science fiction genre, the horror, and the detective fiction. For this workshop, we're going to work specifically in horror and detective fiction today, okay? In Research B, we work with adventure and science fiction, but today we're going to explore with you horror and detective fiction. The idea of this is learning, having some ideas, okay? Having some ideas just to wake up the inspiration and motivate your imagination. What do you need for this kind of activities? Imagination, okay? So now we're going to explore the different genres I mentioned, okay? But before, it's important that you understand or that you think about this question. And the question is, how can literature be useful in myself? It's a very, very important question you have to do when you are going to write. Yes. So let's begin. We're going to explore the horror genre, and we're going to see what happened with this. What are the main elements you need to take into account in order to create a story of this kind of style? So what happened in horror? We're going to recreate scenes, characters, incidents, okay? Incidents that provokes a horror atmosphere. So in these kind of stories, the space and the atmosphere is a very necessary element to generate horror in people, okay? In this kind of literature, we're going to find the chaos and evil, yes, as one of the stars, yes. The human sensations, those sensations that probably could be qualified as dark in some moments in our lives, could be perfect excuses to include in a horror story. Another important element, unknown and outside forces. Normally, we're thinking about mysterious things, situations, objects, moments that probably we cannot explain in a logical way or with proofs. Yes, and it's the fear of all the things you don't know. Yes, the fear of darkness, of the ignorance, right? And then we have some authors, writers, important in this kind of genre. Mainly Mr. Poe, Edgar Allan Poe, yes. Maybe one of the leaders in the American Romanticism, yes. And the pioneer for this genre. A lot of writers like Howard Phillips Lovecraft and Stephen King were inspired by Mr. Edgar Allan Poe in order to create these different stories. So I recommend, for example, The Mask of the Red Death. It's a really nice story about a prince who decide to keep in a big castle with his court because there is an illness around in the town, and that illness is the red fever, the Red Death. So one day this prince decide to create to do a party, and in the castle there are different rooms and places with different colors. And suddenly in the middle of the party, a stranger with strange clothes, really mysterious, come in order to visit the king. Whose is it? The idea is that you read the story, right? So we have Mr. Lovecraft, who is a really interesting person who used horror creatures and different worlds related to the chaos. And finally, Stephen King is more contemporary nowadays, but the Dark Tower saga is one of the books you can read. There are 7, and it's about a tower in the center of the universe. And in the tower, there are many worlds. One of the worlds, it's our world, our planet. Yes. We don't know how many worlds, but there are different creatures outside the tower who wants to enter and destroy all the worlds. How can we do it? By destroying the tower. But let's go to an example that I want to share with you, because I guess you need to see some evidences. So now I'm going to share with you a video. The videos could be a nice strategy to, I don't know, maybe grow up your motivation in terms of the literature. Okay, so I want to show you a perfect example of horror style. We're going to watch a video about this tale by Edgar Allan Poe. The name is Telltale Heart. Okay, so it's about someone who is attacked suddenly in his bedroom, and he's murdered, and then something happened. Okay, so I'm going to share it in this moment. I'm going to include, please hear the sound. Okay, so now give me a moment. Okay. Okay. Here it is.
True, I'm nervous. Very, very dreadfully nervous. But why will you say that I'm mad? See how calmly, how precisely I can tell the story to you. Listen. It starts with the old man. An old man in an old house. A good man, I suppose. He had never harmed me. I didn't want his gold, if gold there was. Then what was it? I think it was his eye. Yes, that eye, the eye, that. His eye staring. Milky white film. The eye, everywhere, in everything. Of course, I had to get rid of the eye. So I waited, watched, waited. I was never so kind to the old man. I looked after him each minute, each second, and I waited. But night after night, in the hour of the slowest clock, I opened the old man's door. The eye was always closed. For 7 days I waited. You think me mad? What madman would wait, could wait so patiently, so long, in the old house, with the old man and the eye that... Then on the 8th night, I knew. Tonight. Still, I waited, while time slowed, stopped, ebbed out. A watch's hand moved more quickly than mine. Then... What? No! For an hour, I did not move a muscle. I could feel the earth turn. The eye. Hear the spider spinning. In the house, the grinding crumble of decay. Then, something else. Dull and muffled, yet... Of course. It was the beating of the old man's heart. He knew. So strong for such an old man. Louder then. And still louder. For all the world to hear, I know. I had to stop it. Then it was over. The heart was still. The eye was dead. I was free. But there was still work to be done. I replaced the planks so cleverly. No eye, not even his, could have found anything wrong. Huh? So soon?
The neighbors reported a scream. We're obliged to investigate.
A scream? My own gentleman. A childish dream. But come in, please. You'll want to look through the house.
That is our duty. Where's the old man?
Gone to the city.
You're up very early this morning.
The dream I spoke of, it awakened me.
When did he leave?
The old man? Yesterday.
How long will he be away?
2 weeks. Perhaps longer.
Nothing out of place here.
There is his bed. Here his cupboard. All in order.
Quite in order.
All quite in order.
Yes, nothing amiss. You understand that when a complaint is made, we have no choice to...
Stay, please. Such a wretched hour. I was making tea. A hot drink will break the chill. Surely it would surprise good people how much evil the night conceals from their eyes. But not yours, to be sure. What did you say, sir? Yes, of course, the hot water. It will do no harm to the bare boards. I'm a little less tidy with the old man away. Then I heard it. It might have been a hand, a clock. But no. Louder. And still louder. They must hear it. Yet they sit and talk and talk. They must. Of course they do. They know. They do. They're torturing me, watching me, letting it beat so that I... Stop it! Stop it, you devils! Yes, I did it. It's there, under the floor. Oh, stop it! It is the beating of his hideous heart! True, I'm nervous. Very, very dreadfully nervous. But why will you say that I'm mad?
Okay, so this is the presentation of this story, Telltale Heart. by Edgar Allan Poe. So this is just a way to recreate what the writer wants, what the writer, sorry, really wants to do, right? So nowadays, what we are going to do is to explore another genre, which is really important, and it's the detective fiction genre. Okay, give me a moment. This and okay, there we go. So we have the detective fiction corner. Okay, you're going to give me a moment. I'm going to share it just one moment with you. Okay, okay, very good. That's it. Okay. Okay, good. So now we're going to explore another genre, is the detective fiction. Okay, what are we going to look for here? Suspense. Okay, suspense is the element that we want to develop when we decide to write a story about detective fiction. What happened in this kind of stories? You have enigmas, enigmas without apparent solution. Yes. What do you need? Normal, this kind of literature requires your reader's common sense to solve the mystery. So the writer is going to provide you different elements, different tools that you have to connect in order to solve the mystery. Yes. So at the beginning, it seems not as an easy task. So that's why you need to use all your intelligence to feel the suspense and to create it. So what are the elements you take into account when you write a detective fiction story? There's a crime. There are clues. You need to organize in a very intelligent way. There are suspects. Sometimes there are witnesses. Okay? What do you need for creating a detective fiction story? So we're going to have a kind of, you need drafts. When you're going to write, maybe it's important to organize information in groups, in squares, in drafts. Yes. As a strategy to organize the information, right? So that's why. So how do you divide the creation of a detective fiction story? We're going to have, yes, and we're going to have different types of characters in our story. One, in the first story, it's the criminal, a criminal and a victim. Yeah. The second part or the second story is the story about the detective and the narrator. Most of the times we're going to find a narrator in the story, yes, who describes some actions of the detective. Yes, and the detective, probably in the story, are going to find how to describe the crime and the victim's suffering. The issue is the problem, yeah. So the crime actually will be the issue. Yes. And in the second story or the second part of this composition, you're going to work the investigation in order to solve the crime. Yes. And in that process of the investigation, you need to answer 3 different questions. Who did it? Yes. How did he or she do it? And the reason why. Why did he or she do it? Okay, so this is a really nice, probably summary for creating a detective fiction story. Let's see some authors, some writers. Probably the most popular, famous, hottest is Sir Arthur Conan Doyle with this memorable character called Sherlock Holmes. Yes, but today I want to talk about another really important writer in this genre, and it's Miss Agatha Christie. Yes, and probably one of the most popular books, Murder on the Orient Express. So Sir Conan Doyle created Mr. Sherlock Holmes, and Agatha Christie has created Hercule Poirot, and that's the name of a Belgian detective, and it's the main character of her plays. Okay, so what I want to do, I don't know if you know about Agatha Christie, but she is the most translated writer in the world. So maybe and one of the writers with many books in her own creation, right? So what I want to share with you, it's a text. It's an abstract about one of the stories by Mrs. Agatha Christie. The name of the story, is The ABC Murders. Yes. So I'm going to read a little part of the chapter 3, which is called Andover. Okay, in order to see some important elements that we find in detective fiction style. Yeah, so it says, Poirot looked at me sadly. You have made there a very pretty resume of nearly all the detective stories that have ever been written. Well, I said, what would you order? Poirot closed his eyes and leaned back in his chair. His voice came purringly from between his lips. A very simple crime, a crime with no complications, a crime of quiet domestic life, very impassioned, very intimate. How can a crime be intimate? Supposing murder Poirot that 4 people sit down to play bridge and one, the odd man out, sits in a chair by the fire. At the end of the evening, the man by the fire is found dead. One of the 4, while his dummy, has gone over and killed him, and intent on the play of the hand. The other 3 have not noticed. There would be a crime for you. Which of the 4 was it? Well, I said, I can't see any excitement in that. Poirot threw me a glance of reproof. No, because there are no curiously twisted daggers, no blackmail, no emerald. That is the stolen eye of a god. No untraceable Eastern poisons. You have the melodramatic soul, Hastings. You would like not one murder, but a series of murders. Okay, so here we can see how the detective describe probably the profile of a murder, the murder's profile. Yeah, so we can see the interaction of 2 characters in terms of understand how the criminal mind works and what can we do, right? So this is the detective fiction, right? So now we're going to answer the question, how can literature be useful in myself? It's one of the questions you have done, right? And probably we're going to find some answers here. 1, literature can be a kind way to have fun and entertain yourself. It's an excellent means to work and develop your imagination and creativity. Literature can become, a source to acquire knowledge. Knowledge about human behavior, about history, about science, about life, the world in general. Literature, it's very useful to improve writing skills. So if you read, probably you will have more ideas, or you can polish all the ideas, all the things you have in your mind, in your imagination, to create the story, okay? So that was the literature part, okay? The part who show us how is the panorama and what kind of things we can do to create text. Now we're going to the writing part, which is the most difficult thing nowadays with all the students, all the people who wants a need, to write a different kind of text. And we need to start to create a habit. And with the habit, we're going to be not only much better writers, we will be probably more professionals, and our intellectuality will develop a little bit more, okay? So we're going to see this section, and it's the draft. The draft is the different steps that we're going to use to create a story, okay? So this is the staging. So if you have some piece of paper in order to take notes about what kind of tips can we use for creating a story, remember, a story related with science fiction, related to the extraordinary or fantastic stories, okay? So you're going to choose. It could be adventure, it could be horror, as we see, it could be science fiction, or it could be detective fiction. Choose one of those ones, okay? One of those thematics. And we're going to do the staging. The staging is all the elements that you're going to put in the scene, okay? So a kind of brainstorming in the scene. I have divided in 5 different steps, and we're going to start with the characters. Meanwhile, I explain you the different characteristics or features. I'm going to share with you a text that I wrote, okay? In my case, I decide to use adventures. That's the genre, okay? But you can choose, as I told you, the style you want, okay? So I'm going to explain you the characteristics, and then I'm going to give you an example with my story. So the characters are the most important. The character is the person or people. Sometimes the character or characters could be animals. In some cases, for example, in Narnia, we have a very important character, which is Aslan the lion. Yeah, so it depends. In Lord of the Rings or Silmarillion, we see different creatures like Balrogs or dwarves, or maybe the orcs. Yes, so they're creatures. So this is the most important because you're going to create a story around this character, maybe the hero and his rival, the enemy. So we need to think about a hero and a rival. Remember, this is just one strategy. There are many for creating stories, but this is just one. So you determine a hero and a rival. What are the profile? You decide, but I'm going to give you some options. You can use vampires, for example, like Anne Rice in Interview with the Vampire. We can use dragons. Why not? We can use detectives. So we have Sherlock Holmes and Hercule Poirot. We can use robots. We can use soldiers, superheroes. The profile, you decide. Okay? I'm going to show you an example. What we're going to do with the characters, we're going to create a description, okay? A description is basically the use of vocabulary. What's your character look like? Physically and the personality too. So in my case, the story that I have invented is called A and X. That's the name of my story. Okay, so I have 2 characters. A is the hero and X is the rival, the enemy, okay? So in my story, A was a tall and strong man, is the chosen, and he is going to bring peace and balance in Emen. Emen, it's a world that I have created, okay? A has the power of handle the wind, okay? X, which is the enemy, the nemesis, was the Lord of Darkness. He's a wizard of fire in my story. He's able to control the fire and dark creatures from Umbre. Umbre is the land, is the place that I have to create for this character. So what you have to do at the beginning is choose the characters, imagine the characters, and describe them. Describe them, okay? That's the first step. Then we go to something which is really important, and it is the setting, okay? The setting is basically it's a description about the time, the place where the story happens. You use descriptions for the landscapes, for the places, for the creatures, for the buildings, for the seasons, for the weather. Yes, in order to create two elements, which are the space and the atmosphere. The space is the place, and the atmosphere is your touch. I mean, your touch is, do you want to create a horror story? So if you want to create a horror story, what is the atmosphere? Is the darkness? It's the fear? Is the mystery? Is the fog around? Yes. So you create the sensation of horror. You create the sensation of adventure. So we have a hero, we have a lot of tests and a lot of missions, and the energy and underline are really, really high, and you are really, really interested about all the adventures. Yes. In detective fiction is the mystery, is the suspense. I need to find the truth. So that is the set. I'm going to show you the example that I use in my story, okay? So this is the contextualization of the story, and I'm going to read, okay? A was born in Tia, the city of the clouds, in a world called Emen, a world divided by 4 kingdoms, one in the sky, one under the sea, one in the Greenlands as the bridge of the worlds. These lived in peace and harmony for ages. But the last kingdom, the only with the power of the shadow and fire, full of cruel intentions, was the dark land of Umbre, where X, master of fire, rules and pretend to be the unique Emen's emperor. Okay, so in this, probably it's not very okay, it's not something new. I am using different elements from different stories. I guess you can recognize it, but those elements help me to create my own world, and I can contextualize the public, the readers. Okay, so this is what you have to do: describe, put in the place, and what happened there. Then we go to the plot. Yeah, the plot is really important because it's the series of events. Okay, the different events, the different adventures, the different moments. Yeah, related to a conflict, a problem, which is what we're going to observe in a moment. Okay, so here, for example, we have a picture from the Lord of the Rings. This is the tower with Sauron, the Dark Master, lives, and you can find around the Balrogs, the Dark Tower, of course, and the Nine Kings, slaves of Mordor, no, slaves of Sauron. I'm going to show you the situation of my story. I put this picture because probably they are related. So the situation or the situations are this. A was the last descendant to learn the equilibrium, a force that brings peace and light in dark times. But to get the equilibrium was not an easy task. For learning the secrets of the great power, it was necessary to collect the 4 treasures hidden in the 4 kingdoms. Unfortunately, X is looking for them too. He was invaded and declared the war. Both hero and rival need to find the golden map in the Silver Mountain, which reveals the paths where treasures are located. The battle has begun. So I am using some examples. This is just a short example because probably you need to check a lot of times and include new information. But here we can find different situations. For example, the equilibrium, learning, it's something that he needs to do. But he needs to collect treasures with a map. So he needs to go to the map to the Silver Mountain to get a map. But he has a problem, and is that his enemy is doing the same and declare a word. So we have 5 different situations: a word, the intentions of the enemy, the visit of the Silver Mountain, the map, and collecting the treasures. So we have different situations in our story. So that is the plot, okay, the events. I told you about a problem, the conflict, okay? And here we need to answer a question. What is happening? Why? What is the problem that I want to create? What is the issue, the inconvenient? So there are different strategies. For example, the conflict is a struggle between 2 people or things in a story. It could be, I don't know, a fighting against another forces, another character, another empire, another world. There are many options. Let's see in the example what I have, okay? So here I decided to describe a very common problem, and it was a war, a battle, right? So it says, the war has come. X decided to attack the Green Land, the kingdom that connects all the worlds in Emin. There, he's looking the green sword, the first treasured. But Olion, the king of Greenland, is not willing to surrender. The terrible battle took 20 days of disaster. Yeah, so here I am just explaining one of the problems in a specific moment. We can think, okay, there is a word in the first searching of the treasures, and there is a new character involved, whose name is Alien, right? So this could be the problem. The word and the desire of conquest is the problem, is the conflict. And finally, we're going to find a closing time. What is the closing time? It's the end, but you can play with it. How to finish is the question. It could be a happy ending. It could be a sad one. It could be an unfinished ending. There is a continuation about it. You decide. You decide. Nowadays, or currently, writers used to create different sagas, so different chapters or showings about their masterpiece. In terms of, okay, the trade too, in order to get more money, I guess, but at the same time, it's interesting because readers can be captivated and go for another answers and find the solution of the story, no? In my example, we're going to see what happened. This is just a little part of the end of the story, okay? And it could be the end of just a chapter, in my opinion, okay? It says, in Silver Mountain, A and X had the final encounter when A was almost defeated by the evil. In the fusion of the elements, everything was one, and the equilibrium rises to delete the darkness in the land. X cannot do anything to contain that power and finally vanishes in the air. Is just an option of the end. In my case, could be happy, right? So don't forget, these are the elements. The elements, some of the elements you can use. So you can use groups, determinate characters, then the atmosphere and space, then the events, then the problem, then a possible end. And then you start to connect and provide extra information. It will be easy because you have some specific ideas. Now you need to think about the details, but the most important is done, okay? Maybe this process will take you time, okay? So you need to practice and be patient, okay? Just to finish and before starting the questions, I want to show you and close with these draft and useful expressions that you can use in order to create a story, okay? A story like such as I show you. So here you're going to find the story that I read, okay, complete, but I am showing, for example, how can you do it in order to do a really nice and conscious writing process in English, okay? So here we have the characters. This is the draft. The draft is the body, is the structure of the text, okay? So we have the characters, the definition, okay? What is the character or the characters? An example, which is the story that I read, where I am describing the characters, yes? And some useful expressions. What are the useful expressions for the characters? Features, characteristics, such as strong, brave, it could be dark, creepy, fast, powerful, ugly. Tell me another one. You need to look for, you need to find what are the expressions you need to describe your characters. Then in the setting, of course, the definition, the example, according to the story, and some useful expressions you can use to introduce your story. Once upon a time is very common in a far kingdom, in a distant galaxy, among the darkness. The night was, there was we don't know, okay, it could work. What about the plot, the events? So, okay, the same, but what useful expressions can we use? Of course, then, after, next, so, therefore, for example, a light comes out in Silver Mountain, or the name of the mountain you want. They discover, do not find anything. A monster, a ghost, a shadow appears. Yeah, there are more. Okay, but this is just a guide. And in the second part, look what we have. Okay, the conflict, definition of the conflict, the example, and the expressions. For example, suddenly, for instance, suddenly, the war, the searching of something. Everything looks like, I don't know, they defend. However, the days, the years, the centuries, the ages passed, for decades, for ages, there are many. And then we have the closing, no? The question how to finish. At the end, we can use expressions like at the end, in the last moment, everything disappeared. The peace returned. Nobody survived. It's up to you. It's up what you want to do with your writing. And to finish, how can I improve my writing skills, which is really important? Use your imagination. Practice little by little. You can't pretend that you're going to do a really nice story just in 1 hour in 1 day. Probably this requires processes because this is art, and all the arts require this time and patience. Read, important reading, because it makes your imagination evolves and produce much better. Organize information, ideas, organize them. Using the drafts, for example, that I show you. Use a dictionary, we need it. And nowadays it's easier because you can type it on your laptops. Write, read, and rewrite. So it means make corrections because probably you have to do it several times. And the most important, in my opinion, be patient. Be patient because, as I told you, it requires a process. Okay? So what is the idea? Because we are not this is not an activity for creating a grade. It's just an activity to invite you to participate. And the calling is about, I make the invitation that you write some stories in English, short stories, by using, for example, this structure, and share with me. The idea is that you can write it and then you can send it to my email in order to check and in order to show how the writing process is starting here at Sampachos. So my email is bilingual.coordinator@sampacho.edu.co. Okay, so if you decide freely to write a story and wants to share, please send it to me by this email address. Okay, so I don't know if some of you have some questions, and if you want to do it, please write it. We're going to look we're going to wait for some minutes in order to answer. So is there any question about how to improve our writing skills? And how can we start to write science fiction or fantastic stories? So if you have the questions, just type them. Okay. Well, so before to finish, because I guess you don't have some questions about it, I want to say goodbye with this little extract of one of the most popular science fiction books in the history, which is Journey to the Center of the Earth by Jules Byrne. Okay, so in science fiction, we are going to take into account, okay, the fantasy, but with the scientific language, and we probably support the story with scientific facts or information. So we're going to listen a little bit, a short extract of Journey.
What I'm about to tell you, I cannot expect you to believe, for some people will believe nothing against the testimony of their own experience. For the purposes of clarity, I must take you back to the 24th of May, 1863, when my uncle, Professor Liedenbrock, rushed into his little house, number 19 Königstrasse, one of the oldest streets in the oldest portion of the city of Hamburg.
Axel! Axel!
The house where he lived with me, his nephew Axel, his goddaughter and ward from Veerland, Gräuben, and our servant, Martha.
It says here, Martha, the new zoological gardens are something of a success.
We thought we would... Professor Lidenbrook, back so soon? And the dinner not ready? Oh, Mr. Axel, I will run and hide myself while you argue with him.
Axel!
Perhaps I will hide too.
Ah, Axel.
Uncle Liedenbrook.
In my study, now.
But Uncle, I was...
Not come yet!
On my way.
A geologist with the keen eye of a mineralogist, Otto Liebenbrock was professor at the Johanneum and was also the curator of the Museum of Mineralogy.
Wait till you see what priceless treasure I found while rummaging in the shop of Hevelin the Jew. A remarkable book. Did you ever see such a binding? And after 700 years.
Magnificent. And the title of this marvellous work?
This work is the Heimstringla of Snorri Sturluson.
Snorri Sturluson? Really, Uncle, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do. Just now, I was busy...
The most famous Icelandic author of the 12th century. It is the chronicle of the Norwegian princes who ruled Iceland.
You don't say. Of course, it's a translation.
What shall I do with the translation? This is the Icelandic original, in the magnificent idiomatic vernacular, a runic manuscript.
Runic?
Do you want me to explain what that is?
Of course not. I know what runic is.
Runic characters were used in Iceland in former ages. They were invented, it is said, by Odin himself.
Okay.
Look there, huh?
So,
And
it's a
wonder.
little extract about journey to the center of the earth. So, well, I think it's time to say goodbye. And thank you very much for coming and take advantage of this information in order to improve your writing skills. Okay, see you next time and go to your classes. Goodbye.